Welcome to our very first Writer in the World live event at MFA Lore. My name's Aimee Liu. I'm here with Elena Georgiou and Sherri Smith to talk about creativity as a survival tool. This is also an MFA faculty reunion, as the three of us all taught together at the late and sorely missed Goddard MFA in Creative Writing. Let's start with introductions. Elena Georgiou is the award-winning poet and fiction writer who formerly directed Goddard's MFA in Creative Writing program. She currently teaches in the PhD program at the Rubenstein School at the University of Vermont. Sherri Smith is an award-winning author of fiction, nonfiction, and graphic novels for young adults and kids, and a faculty member of Hamline University's MFA in children's writing. I'm Aimee Liu. I'm an author, publisher of Substack MFA Lore, and former colleague of Elena and Sherri in the sorely missed Goddard College's MFA program. I think I'm getting feedback. So, oh no. No, a second.
You sound fine.
I think it's
That it's gone now, Aimee. The feedback seems to have disappeared. You're good.
Technology,
indeed. Hang on a second. I think it's the problem that I've got two things going at once, and if I end it on you, I'm gonna.
Now imagine if we were hurtling through space and dealing with the same problems. It would be terrifying. Who would want to be an astronaut?
Okay, that experiment was a failure, ladies and gentlemen, trying to figure out how to do it on the iPad and the phone. All right, so I'm limited to the phone now. All right. Daily devastations, wars, occupations, violence, intentional cruelty, censorship by our own government. It feels impossible to think about deeply because they are all happening all the time by design, and they're happening so quickly that we can't catch them. I have lost Elena.
We lost Elena's internet dropped out. She's in the wilds of Vermont.
Oh,
so maybe she'll log back in.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll keep going and hope that she can come back.
Yeah.
But our premise is that writing helps. And so let's start by checking in. I wanted to check in. Hopefully we'll be able to check in when Elena gets back. But Sherri, how are you doing with all of this nightmare?
I guess it sounds blithe to say, oh, I'm fine. It's madness, and I don't ever do great in madness, but I have been inured a little bit to it from previous experience of madness. I was during the pandemic and the first administration of our current president, I really struggled to write. I struggled for a long time, and it was sort of being the combination of being cut off from my writing community by having to, shelter in place, and trying to figure out a story that I had a hard time even describing was really, really challenging. And I promised myself that I would not let myself be derailed like that again. So what got me out of that problem then was when the lockdown let up a little bit, I was able to meet with a friend who's a writer, and I was describing my mess of a novel to her because I kept trying to write away from the current world, the current problems. It was a contemporary speculative story, but I'm like, are we going to be wearing masks in the next, when this book comes out? Are we still going to be in a world of masks and isolation? So I set the story a few years forward. Are we still going to have the political turmoil? And I set the story a few years forward, and then somebody said, people get reelected. So I set the story even further ahead. And suddenly I'm writing this futuristic novel, just trying to outrun the present. And it was a mess. And my friend was able to sort of sit me down and say, she says, you haven't written a bad novel, you've written 2 novels, and you need to make decisions. And the minute she said that, I could see sort of the dotted line between them. And I was able to separate them and save the story that I had intended to write. And the other story is sort of in an incubator now because it might become something, but it is a different headspace. So that really helped me. So now I took a chunk of time this year. I sort of finished all of the projects. I do a lot of a combination of my own writing and work for hire, and I teach. And so I managed to get through a bunch of the things that were on my desk. And I was gifted with a retreat somewhere at Hedgebrook, actually, which is a women's writing retreat on Whidbey Island in Washington State. And I got to sit in a cabin for a week, a cottage, and dream new ideas and come up with things that felt like they would be medicine for the world for what's going on right now. And that was useful. I've got a note here from Elena. She's trying to get back on, but doesn't know how. And I'm wondering if we can send her a link again. Or is there a way to invite her while we're live?
It's the same link. So let me.
Yeah, maybe just a way to invite her again. So yeah, I came up with some ideas that really felt like they spoke to some of what the world is crying out for, and I was really encouraged and excited. And I got to say, the world is like an angry child that doesn't want to take its medicine. So I came back from my retreat and I reached out to my agent. He's like, what do you want to work on next? And I'm like, I've got this idea. And it was this whole environmental, like there is a lot of climate distress out there. And it was to speak towards that. And he was like, that sounds amazing. And my editors that we sent it to wanted nothing to do with it, which really surprised me. I'm like, but this is what we need. And they're like, no, it sounds too pedantic. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's just a pitch. Let's work on it. And they weren't interested. And then I said to him, I've got this other idea, and it is about American identity and myth and folk tales and like what the stories that make our nation what it is. And he was like, nope, sounds like an anthology. Nobody will want that. I can't sell that. And I was like, but these are I was like, I just went deep into the woods to dream on what we could use, and you don't want it. And so those things end up, because unfortunately I have to balance like healing the world with making a living, and I think that's something that every writer struggles with. And there is sort of nothing worse than thinking I need to be speaking out for these people or for myself or to this moment. And also, I need to write this silly little thing, but silly little things can also be medicine for the world. They can also heal people, because a silly little thing, how many little memes do you look at on social media that make you laugh? And they make you laugh, and it releases like a bit of the tension. It releases a bit of the tension, and it helps you be able to move forward for another day. So I think like we can't devalue the little stuff. But sometimes it feels too small. You just have to remind yourself that everything is an inch forward,
Yeah. And I think also it depends on what kind of a thinker you are. I tend to be a badly linear thinker. So, I'm looking at all of this stuff happening with ice. I'm looking at the suffering that's sort of right in front of all of us. And I feel like that's what we need to be dealing with right now, so that writing about climate or earthquakes or something seems to be off topic,
off point.
Even something that's really, really important seems like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that right now because this is happening,
So something to think about. So I see Elena is still trying to get back in, and she can't.
I don't know why. She should be able to just
she's
press
in the
that
chat.
link.
Elena, you should have been sent a link to let you back in.
I just emailed it, but it's the same link.
Okay, it's been emailed to you, Elena. So she'll try it.
She's got to get on it through the Substack. It's got to be through the Elevated Leaf Substack email address.
Yeah, she's watching us right now through that. So hopefully she can hear us. So give it a try. Let's see if it happens. Something to recognize, Aimee, is so there is the moment, right? There's the moment right now, and we want to speak to it. And in writing, there is fast medicine and slow medicine. Fast medicine is an op-ed, is an essay, is honestly, it's a protest poster, right? That's fast medicine. Longer form, which is what I do, graphic novels, that's slow medicine. And so fast medicine, you take the painkiller to help with the symptoms. And then she says she's pressing join, but all she's getting is listening to us. Because you're pressing join as a viewer and not as a member of the talk. So
I don't know. She should be automatically connected.
I don't know either.
This is the nightmare of Substack occasionally.
If anybody out there can figure out how to bring someone back into a Substack live, please put it in the chat so we can follow your sage advice.
All the instructions say that all you have to do is join again. And she did. I did see at one point, Elena, you tried.
She started to come back.
You started to come back. We saw the sound. You were on by sound, but not anything else.
Try it again, and maybe your camera might need to be turned on again.
Yeah.
Well, so I
love that fast and slow medicine.
Yeah, so you take your painkiller, right? And then you can look at what the symptoms are. And so this moment and the amount of anger and fear and turmoil in the world, we can't ignore. Just like that is a backdrop to us trying to write. And can interfere. You can't ignore that climate fear is the backdrop to the immigration crisis, right? Like we are, if you read enough science fiction, you already know about water wars and calorie wars and the fight for resources, right? That's the history of war in the human race, is a fight for resources. So maybe the protesters go out there and they address the current moment, and the novelists sit at home and feel guilty for not being out there, but work on something that is going to address the STEM problems, dreaming up solutions. And it is a bit of a slow drip because I write for kids, but what I try to do is, it's not that I write a lot of climate fiction or anything, but if you can put ideas into your work that children read, when they grow, those ideas grow with them and they come up with solutions. I mean, so much of the science we have today is based off of somebody's imagination in the 1930s or the 1950s. So that's, I think we just have to be patient with how we work.
Right. Yeah. I think it's really tricky for people who feel guilty. I feel overwhelmed sometimes by the guilt of making things. Well, this happened on our watch. We let this happen. And so that gets in the way. It's interesting that you're talking about the pandemic, and I do find myself going back and forth and thinking about the reality of trying to create during the pandemic versus the reality of trying to create now during this very different nightmare. And creativity was such an obvious balm to me during the pandemic. I would go out every day and take photographs and then create, photo paintings for Instagram. And that led to a really strong sense of community with all the other people who are on Instagram who were making art at the same time, and people who are not artists but were making art. And that all felt very healing and connected. And then this is different. I don't feel a lot of people are doing influencer type videos, and Instagram has gone entirely video, which I can't stand. I don't feel that sense of community anymore online with them. I have discovered that on Substack, there's a really strong sense of community. So I've, really developed a sense of community with other writers and activists on Substack. It's very powerful and very healing. But it's a difficult thing. I really admire your ability to focus on writing a novel, something that's long term, that's large and requires a lot of focus right now. And also that's aimed at publication in a future time. One of the things that the other blocks that I've felt for creativity, writing creativity lately, is this sense that a book takes 2 years to get published. And what is the work gonna, what's the world that this book was gonna come out in 2 years from now? I mean, I've just finished ghostwriting a book that's coming out in April that it happens to be incredibly topical. But when we started it 2 years ago, we thought it was gonna be coming out under Kamala Harris as president.
Right. It's a different animal. Yeah.
And we had to kind of torque it a little bit. And I was surprised, even after Trump took office, that our agents and editors were all kind of like, blinded. They were all sort of saying, oh, no, it's all going to be the same. We're going to have, it's going to come out and it's not going to affect publishing. It's not going to affect the books that get, approved. It's not going to affect the way we're marketing. And of course all of that was insane. All of the best stories that were in the book, we had to cut because they were too sensitive and the litigation risks are too high.
Yeah, that's the scary part, because normally I'd say leave it in anyway because it'll be interesting to see how it lands. But
the lawyers didn't let us.
The lawyers won't let you.
No.
Yeah. I've had that happen, not in terms of politics and like the political climate, but just timing, my graphic novel Pearl, World War II story, it could have come out during the 75th anniversary, or it could have come out leading up to it, but just time and production issues, it came out like after, and it sort of felt like showing up late to the party with a cake. You're like, oh, I have a thing that fits this moment, and it was super frustrating, but it did not torpedo the reception of the book. Sometimes it does, right? Sometimes I've got a picture book coming out this year in the fall that is it's called "The Year the Corgis Saved Christmas," and the Queen was in it. Queen Elizabeth was in it, like vaguely in the background. It was a royal corgi and then some other non-royal corgis, and it took so long to get notes. And the Queen passed away, and I was like, she has been the Queen my entire life, and what is happening? And I had to change the story, and now the story addresses it in a way, but it's like, no, this was meant to be like a fun Christmas story and not about grief. But so hopefully,
that's one big thing that you actually was big in the story, but it was one thing. The problem we're looking at now is like there's
everything.
1,000 things that we take for granted that have been bedrock and sort of fundamental to everything, and now it's all gone. Sherri, now I've lost you.
Oh, you've lost me, because I am trying to. I'm going to stop now. I'm trying to help Elena. According to Substack's help, I'm sorry to interrupt this. It says if your app crashes, reopen the Substack app. Your live video will exist in your reading queue on home for up to 2 minutes. There you can rejoin your live video and continue streaming to your viewers. So it might be too late. You can disconnect or click the icon with the person and the plus symbol to reinvite them. Is what you can do, Aimee. Click the icon with the person and the plus symbol to reinvite them or to invite a new co-host.
There it is. Okay, here we go. Okay, thank you, Sherri.
Sure, let's see if it works.
I've done this enough, I ought to be able to do it, but
Elena, do you see that?
I just sent it to you. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, there she goes.
Oh my gosh.
Merry Christmas.
So sorry. I completely forgot about that trick, Sherri. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. Oh, God. All right. Let's go back to the beginning, Elena. And say, check in, take a deep breath. We'll catch up with you. How are you?
I'm good. And wait, and now I've got like a cat locked in my office. Let me just let the cat out. Here we go. Honestly, I didn't catch more than 50% of what you and Sherri were talking about.
Well, we'll start over with you because the question is, how are you doing in this nightmare of a moment? With creativity and just in general.
I think I might actually be slightly atypical, to be quite honest. I think it has coincided with a moment in my life where I have more time to write than I've ever had in my entire life. And I am trying to make the most of. I've waited for this moment, and nothing is going to stop me. It doesn't. Nothing is going to stop me. So I write. I read the newspapers every single day, multiple newspapers, international news, local news, national news. And I consider that my job as a writer to collect that information. And then after I've done that, I sit at my desk and I don't try and control what I'm going to write. I just allow whatever happens to happen. And I refuse to let my heart and brain be polluted or hijacked. I refuse it. I resist it, especially to so many despicable people that are on the front pages of our newspapers. I just refuse and resist. And what I did catch you saying, and I might have not caught all of it and accurately, you were talking about putting a book together and imagining some different administration and how that
what that was happens. Me. Yeah.
I don't think that way. I don't imagine. I don't. I'm thinking for a future audience. Aimee, I don't know if you said that you had your first grandchild born into the world yesterday.
No, I didn't.
So you could think about writing for your grandchild as a 25-year-old and what you would like them to know. Because, however bad things are, they are not static and they change. They change all the time. And some things sometimes will be horrendous. And then they'll be less horrendous. And we as 30-year-olds, we could never imagine that this is where we would be as 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds. So you have to keep yourself on track. When I was young and I was and I was like on my marches, the campaign for nuclear disarmament, anti-racist marches, all these marches, I didn't know what the world would be like 30 years from now, right? But I did remember someone saying to me, you can't help everybody. You have to decide who are those people, who is your community that you want to focus on, or who are those people closest to you that you want to focus on. And maybe it's one person. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's the immigrant community to which you belong. Maybe it's the queer community to which you belong. You kind of focus on who is it you want to reach, who is it you want to speak to, and don't let other people pollute your heart and your brain. And that's what I do. I sit there and I write to those people.
Yeah. It's great.
I do think that it depends. I hate to say this because I think that is a brilliant way of navigating it, but I do think it sort of might depend on who you are writing to in a way. Like I write for children, and you try to reflect a world that they would recognize or something that they can see themselves in, and their world can be, depending on how young the readers are, fairly small, right? It could be just like family, or it could be school, or it could be even bigger. You get to YA and it can be worlds. But for me, it was like if I want to show people, I was trying to tell a story about an extraordinary thing in the ordinary world, and I couldn't figure out what the ordinary world was. You know, what's going to be ordinary by the time this book comes out? Because I remember reading a book, it's a Louise Penny Inspector Gamache novel that she wrote to be after the pandemic had ended. And so there's just like this opening thing. It was like, and all at once it was over, and shots were available, and everybody was inoculated, and there were parties everywhere. And I'm like, that's not how it was, because that moment had already happened in a very different way. And I was like, God bless her for trying, but it really gave the book a false note. Because it was, and for the first time, you're like, oh, is this an alternate reality? I always thought this was our world. So that's something that is in my head sometimes. But it's also a great reason to write historical fiction, which I also do, right? The past is malleable, but not that malleable. So
Yeah, it almost feels like you've got a choice between historical fiction and dystopia, you
yeah,
know, speculative fiction, because what is reality going to be? What is realism
yeah,
going to look like 2 years from now?
yeah,
Um, I think that's a really big. I always think growing up, especially as a teenager and a young adult, I was always shocked by the idea that um, my mother's world, because my mother lived through the Depression and World War II. So her world was rocked by change. I mean, just
yeah,
enormous change between her childhood in the 1920s and especially the 1960s. Everything changed. All the music changed, the dance changed, art changed, fashion changed, just incredible changes. And she navigated that by a lot by looking backwards and being interested in what was happening. Of course, nothing that happened in her world really changed her world. But for me, then, I I thought I looked at my own life starting, mostly starting in the 60s and thinking how our world was basically so stable. A lot of things went on, but we had the same rock and roll music was the same for us, more or less dancing. A lot of the culture, because we were the baby boomers and we were kind of dictating it and it all history through many years rolled with us until about 2000, until the internet hit, and all of a sudden everything is off the charts. And it's sort of like the last 2 years, especially, have just it's that hockey stick thing, where you're going like this, and then all of a sudden it goes up like that.
it's
The level
future
of
shock.
change. Yeah,
Future shock. It's
yeah,
like that the world can move faster than the human mind can tolerate, right?
right.
And so then it just zoom, and you feel left behind. You can feel left behind and very separate from the next generation, right? I'm a Gen Xer, and I mean, since I'm a Gen Xer, I'm kind of like whatever. It doesn't, like it's gonna be what it's gonna be, man. What can I do? But I could the turning point that I can identify for me was not the internet, because we had a lot of technology swell. Like I remember the first fax I ever sent, and I
Yeah.
called a friend and was like, and then I sent this piece of paper to Japan, and she was like, "It's magic." I'm like, it is magic. And now, like, who uses a fax? But it was 9/11. 9/11, I had people over for dinner shortly thereafter, and I remember us sitting around trying to decide what we would call this moment. what, do we call it the attacks? Do we call it this? And like the idea that something that's now is sort of old hat didn't have a word for it yet, like World War One, they called it the Great War. Like what else did they call it? What do you call it while it's happening, as opposed to what the historians all agree on? And that was the first seismic shift, that like the world is never going to be the same. And it does feel like we've had a bunch of aftershocks since then. But I was a child of the 70s. This isn't new. Growing up, I feel like there were terror attacks all the time. There were economic crises all the time, right? Like the oil embargoes and people lining up for gas. And when I was a kid, it was like you could only get gas on certain days based on whether you had an odd or even license plate number. And that sounds like impossible today, but
I don't know. I think for me that all of those are sort of incidental things, but the underlying foundation of our Constitution and our system of government and
this is the next major seismic change, right?
It just
like
feels
there's
so
an
much bigger to me.
There's an earthquake, there's aftershocks, and then there's this is a megaquake. And I mean, make no mistake that there's a reason, I think, why it's happening around the 250th anniversary. This is the 7-year itch in writ large in national terms. We get to decide again who we're going to be as a nation. It's a quarter life kind of crisis, and there's no guarantees.
Right.
So
let's take a step back to our thesis here that creativity is a survival mechanism. And I wonder if I have my thoughts on that have to do with the state of flow, that when you're creating something, the focus that you put blocks out the rest of the world and becomes soothing and healing and represents a kind of escape. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on why creativity is a survival mechanism. Elena?
Why it is a survival mechanism? Well, let me just think about this. It for me, I don't really know what I think about something unless I write about it, and I need to write about it to discover what I think. So that's one aspect of it being a survival mechanism, but also, like, what am I supposed to do with all the information that my body and my heart takes in if I'm not writing? What impact will that have on me? I don't know, but imagine that it would lead to some form of paralysis or some form of depression.
Elena, do you have two devices going? There's feedback coming.
No, I didn't.
It's weird. Okay.
Let me just double check that. Do you think that that's coming from me?
If you can silence a second device, it'll get rid of the feedback if there are two going. Otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
Do you have your computer on?
Well, I had it closed when that was happening.
Okay.
Okay, never mind.
I don't know. Did it? I feel like it's disappeared. Oh no, it just came back.
It might just be your connection.
Yeah. Okay, don't worry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm the person with all the technical difficulties today.
It's living in rural Vermont. It'll just do that to you.
maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Honestly, Aimee, there are so many different ways that I can answer that question, and it's never so often when someone asks you a question, there isn't one answer. It's a secular prayer. I'm actually going to quote someone that I never thought I would ever quote, and that's Elton John. One time he was asked about his songwriting, and he said, well, when I'm in doubt, I write a hymn. And, when he said that, I thought, yeah, I hear that in his work. And that, I think when I'm in doubt or when I don't know what I'm thinking, I sit down and I write a poem. And it's like a secular prayer to him, to the universe. So that's one way of answering that question. But there are other ways I could answer it, but I'll turn it over to Sherri next.
Yeah, for me, I think so. There's studies that show that when um, children know their family stories, they grow to be more resilient adults because they see that you can survive something difficult and that they're connected to something larger than themselves. And I think that writing connects you to something larger than yourself. You're stepping into the imaginal world and you are swimming through the collective unconscious when you're sort of fishing in the collective unconscious as a writer. And that reminds you that the world and that existence is bigger than the moment that you're living in the mundane world. And that there are I'll just keep coming back to it, that there are medicines, there are lessons, there is strength to be brought back from that imaginal world and put into our world. And that's sort of your sacred duty as a writer. That is what you're doing. You don't have to treat it as like, I am a priestess of the imagination and I shall heal the world. But it's just inherent in the work. And so I think that's why the benefit of that for the individual writer is you can step out of the madness of the real world and you can disappear into the imaginal world for a bit and come back and you will be refreshed. You can also, to what Elena was saying, if you can absorb all of the pain and suffering in the world. A lot of writers are empaths, and that's what the risk is, that you're absorbing it, or you can let it pass through you and be a conduit. So some of my Goddard students would know that I don't do it often lately, but I used to do it a lot. I'd talk to trees, and I got it from a forest bathing experience. And so I would walk up to a tree and put my hand on it and introduce myself, and then just listen and see what arrives in my mind. And this tree down the block from where I live, I asked it one day. I was like, "How are you doing?" And it was like, "I'm tapped into the well of joy." And I was like, "The what?" And they're like, "Yeah, you can do it too. Like, just deep down, do you feel it? There's a well of joy and you can into it anytime you want. But sometimes I just like to feel the wind stir my branches." And I really took it as like you can be in this world being blown by the winds, but you also have this deeper source. And I was so amazed, right? I could see this like taproot. And so I went to the next tree and I was like, "Hey, you know about this well of joy?" And the tree was like, "Of course, the well of joy." And so I think about that. I carry that with me. And I feel like writing, in a way, is my one of my ways of tapping into the well of joy. Being in nature is another one.
Yeah. I think what we're all saying, and as a painter, as a photographer, it applies to visual arts as well. All creativity is a form of connection. It's a form of
Mhm.
relationship. You can't create something without connecting to what it is you're creating, what it is you're responding to, what your model or your subject is. All of this creation is happening. And I think one reason that it's really healing in a time like this is that everything that's being done to us right now is designed to disconnect us, to feel shut off, to feel broken, to feel also it's made to make us feel helpless. And when you
Yes.
create, you cannot feel helpless and create, because the very act of creativity is you're doing something with agency. It's a demonstration of your agency. And when you produce beauty, that's a remarkable thing to create. As Elena said, I wasn't present at the birth of my grandson yesterday, but I was I was there in the hospital, and I was in shortly thereafter, and, you know, the creation of a child is a pretty amazing thing, and the
It's a
parents were
miracle.
pretty pleased with themselves, I have to say. They weren't thinking about Trump or anything. They were thinking, "My God, we did this, and he's perfect." And,
Yeah.
and it's not that far from what you feel when you create a beautiful painting, or you bring a photograph to life as a piece of art, or you write a story, or, an essay that really sings, especially if other people, respond to it.
Yeah.
That's also part of the connective linkage that makes creativity so powerful. And I will say one other thing that I've been thinking about, because it's related to this book that is coming out, but something that I've learned in dealing with that is a part of resilience that we all need to remember is that everything that we do that reinforces our own moral compass helps. And so, Sherri, you were talking about how small it can be if it's just one person. I
Yeah.
think a really healing thing to do, whether it's through our work, or just through being in the world, is to check in with ourselves periodically during the day and say, does what I'm doing align with my moral compass? Is my conscience, am I doing anything that violates my conscience in the way that they want me to violate my conscience? I mean, I feel such pity for these poor people who are desperate for money, and they're signing up to become ICE agents without
Yeah.
any intention of becoming the people that ICE is turning them into. I mean, they are in a horrible moral bind. But Trump would love it if all of us would basically do that. He would break the moral compass in all of us by having us turn our back on our neighbors, ignore ICE detaining people around us, letting neighbors who are hiding go hungry, all of those things, and just being unkind to each other, especially being bigoted and prejudiced. I mean, they're encouraging all of that stuff. So every little thing that we do, whether it's creating a character who stands up to injustice, or is even just paying attention to her conscience on the page, that's all part of what will heal us and help us survive this complete nightmare.
I think it's well said. And that, I think, but you've pointed out something, that the next great medicine that's going to be needed is healing people who have found themselves fractured between financial need and moral compass. So this is great slow medicine, right? Now's the time to start thinking about what's the story you write for that person that's going to help them get back into their right heart, you know?
Right.
And what's the story you write? This is something we ask. So where I teach at Hamlin, the year I started, Philandro Castile was killed by police a few miles away. And one of the other teachers, I think it was Marcia Shaw, who writes picture books, she asked, because he was killed in a car with his girlfriend and her 3-year-old in the back seat. And the question was, what's the story you write for the child in the back seat? And I think that is something to really think about now. What is the story you write for the 5-year-old who is picked up by ICE and with his father and flown to another state and then becomes like an international incident? What's the book you write for that person? What's the book you write for the kid who's standing next to that kid who now knows that these things can happen? So that's good medicine to start dreaming on. You might not have the answer, but it's the kind of thing you can write your way toward.
Yeah. And I think it's also important that creativity helps us make sense of the splits that we're feeling in ourselves. I mean, I feel guilty all the time, as I said earlier, and so writing to make sense of that guilt can be therapeutic. and another survival tool as well. Sherri, I want you to talk to us about your Enchantivist plot. Tell us that story.
Oh, right. Okay. So, some years ago, I was invited to be a visiting professor at Old Dominion University, and I'm an enchantivist, which means enchantivism was created by Dr. Craig Chalquist. He used to teach at Pacifica Institute out here in California. And enchantivism is a form of slow activism for introverts, and it uses deep storytelling, mythology, eco-psychology, and parapsychology, which are about how your landscape influences your mindset and how the landscape influences the world, and archetypes. All of these things to listen to the world. Listen, we do dream work too, because the world speaks to us in our dreams, and asks for help. And so we then use the imaginal world to seek medicine to bring back to our world. And you form these little groups called heartsteads, a group of like-minded people, so that you can address a problem. And you do it small steps incrementally. Try one thing, come back. How did it go? Try another thing. So I decided to do a class called the Enchantivist Plot, which was a group of MFA creative writing students, and I taught them about enchantivism, and we had different segments on mythology and fairy tales. We gathered the tales that spoke to us, and I still have it in my office. I had a Pandora's box we had everybody write down what worried them. What are the ills in the world that you fear? We wrote them all down, and they went into a box with a feather that is hope. So everybody made a feather at the end that was also a pen, so that they could write with hope. But this was like this big dream for this class. And day one, the class started on January 6th, a certain very special January 6th, where it seemed like the United States of America was ending, that it was over. And I thought, well, they'll cancel class because they've just canceled America. And they didn't cancel class. And I'm like, what do you do? How do you lead a class on a day like this? Some of my students were National Guard or ex-military. They're in Virginia. We were on Zoom. So I'm like, I don't know anybody's politics. I don't know anybody's anything. And I got to say, the best thing in the world, I did this during the pandemic. I ended up doing it on January 6th. Get together with other writers and talk about story and fairy tale and mythology, and it can save your life. I studied the art of fairy tale archetypal analysis during the pandemic, during lockdown. And I remember my teacher saying, when people ask you, what did you do during the pandemic? Now you can say, I studied fairy tales. And it was the same sort of feeling. And what was amazing is everybody had a culminating project. They had to do a creative piece that addressed the ill that they had put in the box. And such beautiful work was coming out of it. And it was something that was completely off track from what they would have been doing in the MFA program. Otherwise, we got picture books from novelists. We got a poet created a website with prompts to be in nature every day, even in the city. And it was just really healing. And it was good medicine for the world was being created. So I feel like community with like-minded people, we were a heartstead. That is often the way forward in times like this.
That's great. Elena, you presided over one of the most magical communities that I've ever been part of at Goddard. And I wonder if you want to speak to community. And I also would love it if you would talk about your Two Trees retreat and how that you've got this incredible community that you're about to build and rebuild.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, while Sherri was talking, I actually thought about something comparable from my own experience, but it's not about Goddard College and it's not about Two Trees. But I think I can make the connection, is that I actually was teaching in New York City at Hunter College in the middle of Manhattan when 9/11 happened, and I was teaching a poetry class, an introduction to poetry, and you had to take the 2 or the 3 train to get there, and that was no longer usable because of the towers being blown up, because they went under the 2 or the 3. So it took 3 hours to do a 50-minute journey. So when the class gathered, I said, "Should we just cancel? What should we just not do this until the trains are up and running?" I'm sorry about the feedback. I don't know where it's coming from.
Just let it go.
And these are intro students, beginning students, never written poems before, and all of them said, "No, we want to keep coming to class however long it takes us." And one student had lost their brother because she was, and her brother was an EMS worker, and it saved her life because every poem that she wrote was about her brother, and to the point where they had their brother's funeral. And just when you thought things couldn't get more bizarre, it turns out that the person that they buried, that they thought was her brother, was her brother's partner, and they misidentified, and they had to have a second funeral. So this is the extreme of what went down. But every single student did every single assignment and was chomping at the bit to do the assignments because this is what they needed. This was creativity as their survival strategy. They needed this. They needed to document this. And one of the things that I had said in a conversation with Sherri a few weeks ago is being the director of a program over many years, there are so many horrible things that happen. For example, one of the things that comes into my mind is always because it was June, and June is New York Pride, and it was when the Orlando nightclub shooting happened, and people were devastated by that tragedy. But so, I mean, it maybe it sounds a little. I don't. I don't want to downplay the horror show, but if we don't use our creativity as one of the ways in which we resist, and one of the ways in which we keep ourselves healthy to be able to continue to do whatever we decide is our activism, and if we don't use our own empathy and sympathy, community to help one another, then what are we going to be doing instead? What are we going to be doing instead? So it seems to, so whether you're in an MFA program or a retreat, we're going to be holding a retreat actually on the campus, on the Goddard College campus, which has been reimagined as a place where people can bring their creative projects and do short bursts. And so Sherri and Rico and I are going to do a writing retreat. And it really is that, to create time and space in a safe environment where your ideas will be taken seriously and nourished and moved forward. I don't know, Sherri, do you want to add anything to the idea of the two trees?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, it's now the Goddard campus is called the Creative Campus at Goddard, and it's a home I didn't know that I would get to go back to. I actually have a video of me standing in in a living room at Goddard during a snow, after the snow. And it's the most morose, and this is the Goddard campus. I may never see it again. And I have no idea, what was going on in my mind. But I found that video the other day and I was like, good Lord, I'm glad I get to go back. So, this is not Goddard College 2.0. This is just friends and family. And everybody's invited, go to Two Trees Writers. We're a collective, a collaborative. So go to our website and learn more about it. But like the idea is to come together. We just lost Elena again, so maybe you can invite her in again with that trick, Aimee.
I think we're about to wrap.
Okay, we're about to wrap up. So just to anybody who is interested, Rana Reiko Rizzuto, who is also an amazing writer and one of the three witches leading the retreat. She is an amazing tarot reader and reads for creative people. And so for the month of February, if you're interested and sign up for the retreat, and you bring a friend, she will give you both tarot reading. And Reiko's readings have helped me turn messes into successes with my own novels. So it's definitely a special bonus. But it'll also give you a taste of what this retreat will be. We lean into the woo-woo a little bit. I mean, heck, I talk to trees, and she does tarot, and it's always a good time with two trees. So you can let your hair down, and I can't think of anything more different than like what's going on in the world right now than what will be happening there. But really, it's to help you stop, that idea of like, Calgon, take me away, or can I step off from the world for a minute? Step aside so that you can breathe. The curtains will part. You'll be in this green valley. You can breathe, and then you can leave restored. That's the hope. And I hope that if you can't join us, that you have a group of people in your writing lives that you can retreat with in some way. And because we need to take care of ourselves so that we can help take care of each other.
Yeah. Elena, I see that you're trying to get back. We are about at the hour mark, so I think we're going to wrap up. I am so grateful to you, Sherri, and you, Elena, for joining us and getting this going. I want to let everybody know that however rocky this video is, it will be posted on Writer in the World on Wednesday at MFA Lore, and we'll include the links to Two Trees. So everybody will have that, and some of the wonderful quotes and takeaways that Sherri and Elena have shared with us today will also be part of that post on Wednesday. So I want to thank everybody who's tuned in, and you.
And Aimee, thank you. I mean, like, you are in like such an amazing spot in your life right now. Like, you've got new life, you've got a world full of concerns, and in the middle of all of that, you carved out space for this moment. And I am so grateful. I'm going to cry because I'm so grateful to you. And this is what it takes. This is what it takes. It takes somebody caring enough to pause and say, let's see what we can do for each other. So thank you.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You are beloved, I have to say. And to all of you from Goddard who are out there watching us, we miss you. I miss you terribly.
I miss you too. I miss the community.
And I love that Writer in the World goes on, and that, I hope you'll bring all of your friends to come and join us and subscribe to Writers in the World. You can just subscribe to that part, and you'd only get that. And it's free, and it is helping to keep our community together. And I love republishing your work there, and it's been really fun for me to do, and I'm glad it's going on. So thank you from Writer in the World. Thank you from MFA Lore. Bless you.
Thank you for keeping the torches burning. I really appreciate it, Aimee.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.